books. Thank you very much.
Anybody else wants to ask any questions?
Oh, they want to leave. I'm fine.
No, we can give you 5 minutes
Yeah.
more. Yeah. Anybody? Yeah.
I spent several months in Middle Earth, I think. And yeah, of course. I mean, fantastic worlds make you want to live in them, but it's not something that's unique to fantasy novels, right? Because I remember, largely because of a lack of other fantastic books to read, my whole generation and most generations before me grew up reading Enid Blyton. Lovely books, right? And it was yeah. I've spent a lot of time living in that world, eating cucumber sandwiches and egg sandwiches and many other kinds of food, which were very disappointing when I actually ate them in real life, right? Because who eats tongue? Really, I mean, it's made out to be such a delicacy there. Yeah.
What do you say about
Yeah. Sorry, was someone already?
good books and bad books?
I read the good ones, I avoid the bad ones. You're asking me actually very deep questions, So I can give very quick answers to them, but these are questions that one can write entire books on. For me, I don't really encounter bad books and bad films and bad comics because I stop reading or I stop viewing if I don't like where something's heading. So I would never finish a book that I thought was bad, and therefore I have never really read a bad book. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a question about writing for comics.
Yeah.
You were saying earlier that when you write for a novel, you don't want to feature any of the characters on the cover.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile it with comic writing? Because a lot of what you're writing will also be dependent on how the illustrator
Absolutely.
interprets.
And one of the first thing I discovered when I started writing in other media was how lovely just prose was. Every time I feel completely disillusioned with writing and with publishing and with all of this, which is often, I go off and have a few meetings in Bollywood, and suddenly I start loving books again. So of course, especially if you're used to writing, the amount of control you have and the it's so lovely being able to create something where it's just you building your story. And of course it's often horrible when you have to it's like those trust exercises in theater where you fall back and hope someone will catch you, and sometimes they don't, I can tell you from experience. And that's what usually happens in when you're working with anything else. At the same time, there are this one time in 10 where a good artist whose imagination is actually better than yours when visually expressed will work with your script and will make it better than you could have imagined it, and that is a wholly magical feeling in itself. Because when you're working with a really good artist and you obviously see characters and movements and frames, let's say, a certain way, when you know that someone's doing it better, it's amazing. It's really nice.
Sorry, this is two in one. You're sort of, it's like two people telling a story then, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's several layers going on.
But when it works, it really works. Have you read The Sandman? And doesn't it work there? I think it's better there than it would be as a book, because you just have so many fantastic artists giving us different ways to look at the same character. The reason I don't like having character illustrations for my work is that I think the process of creating how a character looks inside your head is a nice process. It's like when you see adaptations of your favorite books. Often you wonder, for example, when Heath Ledger was first signed on to play the Joker, a lot of people had problems with the way he looks, largely because, of the way the comics looked, and there you actually have a visual template to work on. When after they watched him play the Joker, no one had any complaints. A lot of people were sad when he died only because he wouldn't be in this movie. So when those surprising moments come, it's lovely, and it's worth it. It's worth the times you get to see it done and it's not being done well.
How do you hold your dedication to writing? Because I like to write, and one of my biggest problems is that I start something and then 2-3 days later it's just this unfinished Word document on my computer.
Right.
And
I have those.
I don't know how to,
No, you just keep doing it. There's one reason that a lot of people stop writing is because they read a lot and they hate whatever they produce at first. So while I would like to encourage a lot of people to stop writing, if there's also a lot of people who I really wish would write. A lot of my friends who I know are fantastic writers, fantastic journalists, who I keep pushing to write. And the reason is that, you know, I'm sure that at some point, at some private moment in their lives, they've started work on a book and they've hated it completely because they have a very harsh eye and they're not easy to please. And of course, it's extremely difficult when it's your own work because it just seems like when you put this out, your friends will, you know, strip you and then point at you and laugh at you. But there is a point in your writing where it suddenly all falls into place. You know, maybe there's a technical term for it, I don't know what it is, but there is a point where your characters suddenly become people. Usually it's a point where if you've laid out a path for them, they stop following that path. They start making their own decisions. They don't act exactly according to how you want them to act. They start talking to each other instead of you having to tell them what to say. When you reach that point, you will know that the rest of the book or whatever medium you're writing in is going to flow smoothly. You have to soldier on until you reach that point. Yeah.
How do you avoid being overindulgent? Because with a lot of fantasy that I've read particularly, a writer might like perhaps always want to see purple trees.
Right.
So they include purple trees in this alternate reality,
Right.
and it's completely it's complete
Yeah.
crap.
Finish the
But, you know...
How many children are here usually?
Yeah. So it doesn't add, and you know, Chekhov's gun, it should be a part of the story, it should add. How do you avoid being indulgent and turn the story?
I have often not avoided it at all because that is great fun to do. At the same time, I think as I grow older, yeah, I'm avoiding it as much as I can. I miss it, you know, I miss calling a desert the Alu Gobi desert and so on, which is complete self-indulgent. At the same time, I wouldn't want to make it a rule that you can't be self-indulgent because there will be some people for whom that is the best thing about the book. You know, so I think as long as you have a decently critical eye as to, you know, this is a bit much, really, delete. I wouldn't say don't be self-indulgent at all. Just try to do it in a non-obnoxious way, which your purple trees sound like. Yeah. Yeah.
What were the 7 rabbits?
Oh dear. Okay. There was Monty Python's rabbit. There was David. I don't know whether it's Gamel or Jamel. He had a killer rabbit. There was a killer rabbit in Grant Morrison. There was a killer rabbit in Warren Ellis. There was a killer rabbit. There are more.
Donnie Darko.
Yeah. Hand over there. Yeah.
Usually when I'm writing my novel now, I said the first chapter to a friend of mine, 2-3 friends of mine, and they all said that my novel had too many dialogues in them and not many descriptions.
Ignore them.
How do you balance it?
I don't balance it. You ignore your friends. You finish your novel. If it does have too much dialogue in it, then an editor will tell you to cut some of your dialogue. I don't know. I mean, see, I don't really believe in peer review. I think, you know, there's a reason why people are professionals. Let the professionals do the job. If the editor tells you it's crap and it's because there's too much dialogue in it, I'm sorry.
Could you weigh through your lens the advantages and disadvantages of movie adaptation of something like a genre of speculative and fantasy fiction?
Yeah, but they'd be the standard arguments, you know. And
Majorly, I would like you to expound upon the extent of creative liberties they take.
I'm perfectly happy with people taking creative liberties in adaptations of work because I don't think the only obligation they have to anyone is to tell their version of the story in the best way they possibly can. So have I disliked adaptations of my favorite books? Intensely, often, but it's never because they weren't true to the book. It's because they were bad in themselves. And I think that this is something that, you know, people should take with them when they go to see something adapted to a new medium, because you're not, you know, that book, the memory of that book will always be yours. It will always be a lovely book. You're seeing it in a new form now. So, you know, if someone introduces a new character or changes the ending, that is their take on it. It's their material now to do what they want. So yeah, so I would say if the adaptation is bad, you know, burn it, kill it. But not because it's not the same thing as the book. Yeah. Did you have a question? Sorry, were you asking one a long time ago? Yeah, go ahead. You forgot, no? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were talking about comic books and writing comic books. You answered that.
Right.
But there's another one about you told someone about their writing and so was there a point where you thought that your writing say wasn't as good and that you wouldn't want to do it? You said
Always. I always think it's terrible.
So was there a point where you said that I don't want to put this out and that I want to keep it for myself?
Never. No, it's not that. I mean, I edit furiously. I cut out huge chunks of what I've written. I'm completely ruthless when I do that. I think I managed to bring it to a point where it's palatable. But yeah, I would never think of not writing. I mean, because there's plenty of. I mean, a lot of very brilliant people don't write for exactly this reason. It won't be that good. It'll be something. It'll be better than a lot of other stuff that's out there. It's fine.
In nutshell,
Can the gentleman there ask a question? So I'll get back to you.
Do you think for someone to want to become a writer, he has to have a certain standard of English and a certain standard as to how much he thinks about his plot? Because you look in the market and there are a lot of books which you look at and you see that's not really like a really good level of English, or he hasn't really thought about the plot so much. So do you think that those kind of things shouldn't be in the market, or it's fair?
I think everyone is entitled to write whatever they want to write. And
Don't be diplomatic.
I'm not being diplomatic. I honestly no, because I'm and obviously I know the school of writers you're referring to, but I'm not being diplomatic because there are a lot of people who think, for example, that fantasy literature shouldn't be published, which I think is ridiculous. So since I've seen a lot of unfair discrimination, any sense of discrimination I feel, which I would think is fair, is not. If that makes sense to you. So if something, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily spend 150 crores making Ra 1. I would keep some of that money and live the rest of my life. But I'm not questioning its right to exist. If it didn't exist, what would I slam? What would I feel superior to?
How do you draw a line between for you?
Yeah.
How do you draw a line between over description and the perfect description?
Pure blind faith. Essentially, I stop when I'm getting bored, and I get bored easily. So I'm assuming that my readers.
When you describe something, you want to describe it totally, and when you read it, you find it that you have described it over. You feel that you need to leave something for the reader's imagination.
Yeah, but none of the essentials, I mean, I think the best way to deal with it is, I remember reading, I think Neil Gaiman, one of my favorite writers, talked about the need to distance yourself from your work after a certain point. So you write something, you let it fester in a drawer somewhere, and then when you come back to it, it's a whole other piece of work. Your mistakes jump out, you see that a sentence you find yourself quite attached to before you've grown apart. And it's just a matter of fumbling your way around in the dark, really. But it works. Just give it a bit of breathing space and time.
Yeah, right. Well, I have sort of a comment about what you said about adaptations,
Right.
and how once you decide to adapt it, it's sort of your own material to do what you want. I mean, sort of, I'd like to disagree and say that specifically when it comes to world building, I mean, you have to maintain like the internal logic of that world.
No, give me an example.
Well, I had a really huge problem with the Harry Potter movie, the last one. I don't know
Right.
if you've seen it or read the book.
I've not seen it, no.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, the ending isn't consistent with the ending laid out in the book. It's illogical.
See, that's also because you've spent so much time just getting drawn into that world, and then when an adaptation of that world isn't done that meets your expectations, which are perfectly valid expectations, it offends you at an emotional level. So I'm saying that your offense is very relevant and you're entitled to it. I'm saying at a completely abstract level, they're also entitled to the way they made it. And if you didn't like it, you're perfectly justified in not liking it. But I'm not saying that it shouldn't exist, if you know what I'm saying. For example, I was amazed to hear that The Lord of the Rings was being made into a film. It took me a lot of effort to go in there wanting to like it, not wanting to, pick holes in it every 5 minutes. I managed and I love the movies, most of the movies. But it just works. You just end up being happier if you're not so worried about what the reality is, because it's all fiction. It's also because I'm older than you. Yeah.
One question was, how
Yes,
to
sir.
read books? My question was this. How to write? How one can learn
You know,
writing?
if I knew the right answer to that, I would be a happier person. I think you just start and type or write and write until it's finished. That's really the only way to do it. There is no right way to do it. Yeah.
Three of your favorite fantasy books that you'd recommend for people to read, which aren't your own.
See, it's like the roster of the Barcelona football team. It's this constantly changing array of glittering talent. So, right now, I would say China Mieville. I would say the Magician's Lev Grossman. I know you don't like him, but that's okay. Who else? Who else?
This is your question. not
No,
mine.
but someone answer it because there is someone who's escaping me. Yeah. I'll get back to you on the third one. Just keep reading Neil Gaiman, whatever you guys just put. George R.R. Martin, but you know all these names. Yeah.
What to do if you lose interest reading a book like I read Twilight and
Stop reading it.
and I lost.
Seriously, and you know, and it's not. I mean, if you say buy a book of mine and you lose interest in it, stop reading it. If you bought it, I'm happy.
No, I read Twilight and I lost interest in fiction.
Yeah.
So
No, don't do that. See, that's like losing faith in men. You know, I mean, yes, there are many flaws. Yes, I understand, but somewhere, you know, like Shah Rukh Khan says, that's the right one. Yeah.
You spend so much time creating these worlds and populating them with all these people you like to see, like to meet, maybe. How do you?
Yeah.
In some
Yeah,
cases,
yeah.
I suppose. So how do you? Are you ever tempted to revisit the worlds that you created?
Always. I wrote a trilogy.
No, but as corollary to this question,